Happy Friday, beautiful people, and hello to you all out there tuning in for your first sip of the weekend. You're tuned into your happy hour with Friday Feels. We're celebrating all you working professionals out there doing your crazy craft, embracing the beauty of being human and connecting authentically. We're your host, Saj and Nicole. We're living and working around the world, holding space for you and keeping it raw and real as we share fresh content with you every week. Follow us on LinkedIn at Friday Feels and Instagram at These Friday Feels for updates throughout the week.
In our last episode, we chatted with Vanessa Royal, the co-founder of Tilden, who spoke candidly about the entrepreneurial journey and what it has been like pioneering the current wave of sobriety culture and working towards a more healthy lifestyle through their brand.
And this week we are unpacking this theme of the tipping point a little bit further. So it might be a point, a moment, or what feels like a destination at times, but the tipping point is really about journeys. And we all have our journeys, our stories, and our choices. And today we are very, very excited to speak to a global living and working gentleman who has had some very interesting journeys to be where he is today. Mochamad Asri, as I know you, Mo, is now working in the mecca of technology in Silicon Valley. And you're living on the sunny shores of the US, but you started in the third world country of Indonesia. And actually, you made a stop in Japan along the way. And anyway, you can tell us a little bit more about it. But thank you so much for coming on today to share your story and chat a little bit more about life as an engineer in the ever-evolving world of tech, especially accelerated automation and what it's like to be working in this field in the US.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, just a little bit of introduction. I am Mo. I was born and raised in Indonesia. It's a very beautiful tropical country with 17,000 islands. And I was there till high school. Then after high school, I went to Japan for college, undergrad. I spent some time over there for 6 years and a half. I did my undergrad in computer science and master's. Then, I wanted to explore some other places on Earth. So I decided to pursue my PhD in the US. And off I went to Texas. I did my PhD over there. And again, computer science. I was tempted to maybe switch major to horseback riding because of Texas known for cowboy, but my love for computer science just too overwhelming, so I decided to just be dedicated to computer science. So I finished my PhD in Texas, and then I moved to California, a sunny state, the west coast of the US, for work. I worked for Facebook for around 3.5 years. And now I am with NVIDIA. We're building chips for AI that, enable all this cool, new and fancy, technologies that we are enjoying at the moment. So that's a little bit of introduction from myself.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I never saw any horses when I was in Texas, but I can understand the draw.
Yeah.
So I connected with you a few months ago because I was looking after some lovely chickens in
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah.
And I was on the beautiful energy exchange, learning new things. I was very scared of chickens before that, but now. And I made an amazing friend in Brittany, who's a mutual connection.
Yeah, a mutual friend. Yeah.
And she put us in touch, and we quickly learned that we share a lot of passion for the same things in the world, especially how we live and earn, which is maybe another topic in philosophy to explore another day. But yeah, when you spoke about today's topic and having you on, you mentioned the power of education, passion, and having a calling being really important. So do you mind sharing with us a little bit more about what that means for you and why this topic's important?
Yeah. So I grew up in Indonesia. I had a really happy, childhood over there, and I, was really enjoying life over there. Very relaxing, slow, coconut fruits every day, just amazing. And we really had a great time with our family until my dad passed away when I was 11 or 12. It was very unexpected, and obviously that had a consequence on our family because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so financially it was very hard for us. Dad being passed away, mom was trying her best to just basically still support me and my sister. She would do side gigs and here and there just to make sure both my sister and I go to college. And I remember when I was in high school, my mom called me and just wanted time to speak to me. She said that, I got to be honest, dad is gone, and then I am a stay at home mom, and, I am, we're not financially there to support you to go to college because it's expensive, and then we don't have any financial power. So either you have to work after high school, or you have to find someone or some entity to sponsor your college education. So I was kind of a little shocked because I was just assuming that, well, after high school, I'm going to go to college because that's all what the cool kids do, right? But it was just a moment where I was like, wow, yeah, I needed to find a way. And I always believe that education is really important, and it could really make a huge difference in anyone's life. My dad, for example, he came from a very far island called Sumatra in Indonesia, and he worked his way out to Jakarta and worked in a government agency, and he always stressed, emphasized to our my sister and I about the power of education that really changed everything. So it was always back in my mind that I really want to go to college because I believe that would really change your world and all of the give you all of the opportunities. So I told my mom, you know what, let's do some research and see like what options we have. So long story short, I came across this opportunity from the Japanese government. They have this scholarship every year that they would take high school graduates from all countries in the world, and they could go to Japan, study, and with all the tuition fee covered and stipend also provided. So I told my mom, I'm not the smartest kid in the school because all I did was play soccer or play music, guitar. But let's try. So it doesn't hurt. And then we tried applying to that program, and miraculously, I got accepted. This day is like still mind blowing to me because it was I think 1,000 applicants, and only 10 applicants got selected for this program. I still believe that was probably part of it luck, part of it also my mom's prayer. It was just very very magical. Anyway, so from the place where I didn't know if I could go to college, now I was about to go to Japan for my undergrad, and then it was very life-changing experience. I would say this opportunity of getting college education, particularly in Japan. And then I went to Japan, and from there, just like new doors keep opening. Japan, Tokyo, I learned so many things, and then it opened up new perspectives, and then obviously I discovered there are also other ways and opportunities. Then I end up going to the US for my PhD, and then I end up being in Silicon Valley for work. So what I'm trying to say is it's one little change in your life. In my case, it was education, being able to go to college could open so many, opportunities that you would think is impossible. I didn't even know when I was in high school, oh, there's Silicon Valley, let alone getting education. So I think it is very, very important because it would create things that you would otherwise think impossible. But now, with the power of education, it can become reality.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think your education is something no one can take away from you, right? So it is true. It can always open doors, and sometimes it's a good insurance policy too. I think Vanessa mentioned that last week on last week's episode. In the context of the entrepreneurial journey and education, some people feel very strongly like, you can hustle your way into anything, which is one school of thought, but it's also true. It's a fact. If you do hold a degree, at least it's some sort, it does open a lot of possibilities that sometimes you can't, knock on all doors without it.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, Mo, but you obviously didn't speak Japanese before you got there.
No, no, I didn't speak Japanese at all.
So
No,
you were really throwing yourself out
oh,
there.
no, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't
Yeah.
speak Japanese at all before I went to Japan. I literally had zero Japanese. You could say all I know is just what do you call that Japanese food?
Sushi?
Sushi, right? That's the only Japanese I literally, because I love eating, but that's the only Japanese I know. But luckily, that program basically prepare you to go to first language school before you go to university. So we were educated for like a year to just speak Japanese so that we would understand physics, chemistry, math in Japanese, right? And it was rough. I still remember, there are nights that I would just think like, oh my God, what lapse of insanity, made me want to come here and study here in Japan. I couldn't even understand the characters, the kanjis and all that. Very different. In Indonesia, we use alphabet. In Japan, they use kanjis. All to me, they look like dancing drunken worms. It's just like, what are they? It's just insane, right? But I learned that sometimes, it really requires someone to be in do or die situation where the biggest growth is just awaiting around the corner. And you really had to be in that moment because otherwise you wouldn't have thrown everything from yourself. And, they call it what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not always the case. I don't believe everything. If you're in a bad situation and you should be able to assess whether it's worth staying or leaving. But in some cases, yeah, it is true that what doesn't kill you makes you super strong and stronger. So it was just one of those things in Japan that I just needed to persevere because what other options I had? Going back to Indonesia wasn't an option. So I needed to stay. And yeah, it worked out magically.
Amazing. And then when you went to America, did you spoke English? Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a little bit. Yeah, I didn't speak English very well before I went to the US, but I guess my time in Japan, I love soccer. I love playing soccer, or we call it football in Europe and in global terms, because in America that wouldn't fly. So when I was in Japan, I would, play soccer with, a lot of international students, some of them from Europe, some of them from UK. So, I kind of casually learn from them through soccer, hey, pass the ball, and left and right, sometimes they ask to pass to the left, I pass to the right because I didn't understand it. But, through that, I learn a lot, because, it's just like everyday conversation and you meet regularly. So my English is getting better. And then, obviously still couldn't understand Texas accent the first time I came to Texas. It's really hard. It's like, what are you talking about? Can you slow down a little bit? But at least enough to survive the basic conversation. So, yeah.
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting, like you say, how you practically learn certain languages because I was working with a friend of mine who's also a music composer and he's French, but his English is very good. And he said, well, he learned mostly because he wanted to play music.
Yeah,
You know, so he learned English through the songs that he learned. You know, like you say, it's a practical experience. So, and
yeah,
then I guess you pivoted into the language of software engineering, which is a
yeah,
language of
yeah,
its own.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I learned along the way that, if the why is strong, the how would just follow. So if you really have something that needs to be done, and you would naturally do everything to get it done. And that was just the case for me, learning Japanese, learning English. I needed to, because otherwise, it wouldn't fly. For example, in the first time I came to the States, I was a teaching assistant for 400 freshmen the first semester. So what I'm going to do if I don't understand at least basic English, it's just not practical and impossible. But you're right, it's more fun along the way if you learn that with alongside that you love doing. For example, learning English by playing soccer. I think it could be a lot more fun doing that than just like studying a room with books. So yeah.
That's a good tip. I never thought about it that way.
I actually remember Alex, who we had on a few weeks ago on the topic of money positivity. He had also said, if you package the things you don't like doing in a way that you do like doing things like associations, then your brain just opens up. And I think that's really true. So, yeah. Now, what a journey, Mo. I mean, it's just been incredible tipping points for you along the way. And what do you feel was like the hardest thing at those times, like things that you were facing within yourself and kind of discussions you were having with yourself? What was like that hard tipping point? What made you, besides the need to, there's a passion behind it as well, like you say, you won't just, you could probably go and work as a cashier somewhere, but you have a passion for something. So what was that for you?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to my childhood memory. I was very close with my dad, and when he passed away, obviously, it just breaks everything. My world and my everything, because he was my hero, he was my role model. I think 2 years before he passed, or 1 year, I forgot. He bought me a computer, my first computer. It's just very big. One with the floppy disk and CD-ROM, if you guys remember, and I remember like he wasn't like the richest man in the neighborhood, whatever, but he earned enough for our family so that we could live comfortably. But apparently he would save some money just to get me a computer so that I could learn more about new technology. I think in some sense it really touched my heart knowing that story after he passed away, that he could have bought anything that he liked, but instead he wanted to invest in me and my future. So it was really, really touching. And then I always carry that memory growing up. I don't know if you guys watched this Pixar movie called, I forgot the title, but it's about core memory. Basically, they're saying that everyone in this world, they are formed and shaped by their core memories. What are core memories? Core memories basically all these memories that were formed when you were a kid, that shape your core beliefs and core views about the world. And for me, that's one of those moments when I listen or hear my dad was doing was saving money for me. It was just like, okay, this is my core belief that something I need to do something about this, and I just couldn't let my dad down. There's got to be something meaningful and something big behind this. So, and that just always made me feel like I wanted to do and study more, particularly computer science, because of the history or the the stuff that my dad did to me. So obviously, along the way, it was hard because I didn't have a lot of background in computer science, and on top of that, I was learning Japanese, just another language. But I always remember when things get tough, I always ask myself, what would my dad do? What would he tell me if he sees me struggling? And then I always imagine him telling me that, yeah, I know you're struggling. I know things are hard, but hang in there, because I believe in you. You're going to get through this. So, every time I imagine his face, his voice, it just gives me extra motivation to keep going until my complete whatever things that I need to complete. So I guess for me that, connection and bond, my dad, that even though he's gone now, but I always can feel his presence. And every time I have difficult decisions to make, I still sometimes ask myself, what would dad say to me? That's been the core backbone when things get rough. Yeah.
It's amazing. Oh, I'm fighting tears here. I'm sorry. I think it's the veil between humanness and spiritual is so thin. We sometimes feel that the person's so far away, but the essence of their energy is still there, and so it makes sense to me that you feel him so strongly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all need that guiding light. We all need that. Sometimes you have to be that for yourself.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's hard to be that for yourself. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing that you could share that with your parents and that bond. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Thanks. The movie name, now I remember, is called Inside Out, if anyone is interested. I
I was
think,
thinking that was the one. That was an interesting movie. I think I watched it with like some little cousin, and I was like crying.
it's such a good
I was
movie.
not expecting this.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. And they're coming with the second sequel this June. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Well, I had to watch it. I had to find the kid as an excuse to watch it.
Yeah.
Animations are often like that, right? Like they're very much actually for us as adults to remind us to be children
Right.
and
Yeah, Pixar does a good job.
yeah. I'll have to watch it. I haven't yet. So
Yeah. It's a great movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good for kids too because I mean it's good for adults, but it's good for kids because sometimes they can't identify their emotions. So
Yeah.
it helps. It's like I think the feelings are personified, and so but their age is probably like maybe like 5, 6 or up to like 10, 13. So it's interesting because that's I mean even adults have problems
Yeah.
identifying their feelings, so there's no judgment
yeah.
here.
But I think it simplifies the framework so
Yes.
that kids could think about themselves and their identity, So,
Yeah.
it's really
So
good.
I'm curious, now you're working at NVIDIA and you're also building something really cool. Can you tell us about what that tipping point looked like for you? What is it that kind of drew you to starting something out on your own? Was it a problem? Was it a itching or a feeling that you had to push this out? Just curious.
Yeah. So when I was in Japan, first year, I still remember, freshman, I got interviewed by a local journalist. He was basically interested in knowing more about the struggles that international students are facing in Japan.
Mhm.
So in that interview, he was asking me about my life in Japan and etc. But one of the questions that he asked was, what do you want to do once you're done with your education in Japan? And me being like, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, probably, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, right? But I just casually told him that, I wanted to go to the US because I wanted to do PhD over there. And I wanted to study more because I like this field. And then once I'm done with my study, I want to go to Silicon Valley because I want to work with the best engineers in the world, I said. And then once I'm down at Silicon Valley, I said, I want to go to Indonesia to build something from, stuff that I will have learned throughout all my journey. And I was like 18 years old of me. I didn't even think through it. It was just like a dream, right? And I didn't even know how to get to the US. I was not a crazy rich Asian, maybe a little bit crazy, not rich. Yeah. So, but it was just interesting, the power of maybe your subconscious that you just told people. You might have not thought through that, but that gives you some hint. And then, when I graduated my PhD in work Silicon Valley, I saw that article back, the interview, and I was just sobbing. I was crying. Oh my God, this 18 years old me was dreaming this. And now here I am, basically to the point that he wished my 18 years old. So it was just a moment that I feel, oh, wow, I'm glad that I could honor this 18 years old dream. And from now, I don't want, I only, I want to do more so that this 18 years old wild dream can even be bigger and bigger. So start working for Meta. I always wanted to, work with some forefront technologies. At the time, we were doing AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality. And then 2023 came along, and then, it was the era of generative AI. And then when I saw this technology, I was like, wow, I really was super impressed with the technology. And then it only makes sense that I wanted to ride the wave. So when NVIDIA is the best company to ride this wave, in my opinion. So the move was just only natural, and I wanted to work with the core forefront technology, and it only made sense that I join NVIDIA and ride the wave. So that was like a tipping point that I wanted to experience this new and coolest technology. And obviously that's for a reason that it's fun to be in core forefront technology, but also I wanted to get that perspective when I see this new things happening, right? Now I can have that perspective, and maybe I could even build something new going forward with myself or with my own things because I've been there. Sometimes if you dream about something because you've not been there, you're like, oh, maybe my idea is just too crazy, too wild. But when you've been there, you've witnessed how new technology emerges, you feel more confident. Yeah, I've ridden the wave. Now I'm very confident about the new wave that I'm trying to create. So that's basically the thought process.
That's like manifestation. Absolutely. And so you were saying that your 18-year-old self wanted to go back into Indonesia and, do something cool. I know last time we chatted, you had some really cool ideas of what that could look like.
Right.
I don't know how far you are in this venture and how much you can share with us,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So it goes back to the issues that I care about and I'm passionate about. We mentioned about education. In Indonesia, I think less than 40% or even 30% of people over there had graduated from high school. So it is, if you compare the numbers to other countries, it is pretty low. And when we talk about how education can change your life in the best way possible, I think I'm really drawn to that because I've been there. I was one of the kids a couple years back, and I was fortunate enough, at least, to get a high school education, but not a lot of my people over there could enjoy the same thing. And now I'm fortunate enough to even have experienced higher education degrees. So there is a growing calling for me, a voice that calls me to like, okay, now you've experienced what it feels like to be able to get education at highest level. And then, but I was also just a kid, a couple of years ago or a couple of decades ago that wasn't sure about my future. So I'm sure a lot of kids in Indonesia were like that too, and they didn't even know like why we should go to get a high school education. So I really wanted to help because it is a personal story for me because I was one of them, and that's the number one calling that I wanted to help my people so that they could unleash the best potential that they can achieve, and that is massively helped by education. I always believe so. I think that's always been the fire inside me that I wanted something. I was now fortunate enough, and I want to give back to where I belong. And obviously, to build that education, improve the education system, you need some capital and stuff like that, right? So I could not just go there and say, okay, we're gonna improve education system, build more schools. How are we going to do that? So another thing that I wanted to do is obviously build some sort of business over there, right? Leveraging what I already know, learn, and experience here. And I think there's a lot of potential things to do too in Indonesia. Economic growth constantly above 5%, which is really nice. It's growing, lots of development happening. So, I wanted to also contribute and do something to help people unleashing their true potential from the industry sector point of view, but also from education. But if I can do this at the same time with the industry, hopefully generating revenues, then I could also build the education part. And then at some point, this is going to just be like supporting each other. So that's my biggest dream, an ultimate dream. Yeah.
Well, we're really excited to see you build that and where it's going to lead. And Indonesia is a beautiful country. I've only been to Bali,
Yeah.
but I feel like I also only saw like a little piece of that, and so at some point we'll have to go visit, and I hope you can
It's
be my
lovely.
tour guide.
Yeah. Yeah. We have 17,000 islands, so not going to run out of islands.
If I start now every year, I'll never get there.
Do you go back often?
Yeah, at least once a year.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. I miss the coconut over there. Every meal, you can
That's
have.
true.
Yeah,
We drink ones in the Caribbean,
yeah,
and they taste different than the ones from like Thailand or Central America. So now it's just like, all right, let's just cut it from the tree. I don't know, because that's like the closest you get. It's really
yeah,
weird.
yeah, yeah.
I guess wherever you grow up or are used to, you get that taste. Because it was so funny when, like, when you go on cruises or you go to anywhere where they say it's like Caribbean and they give it to you in that like brown coconut shell.
Right.
And I remember my dad always used to be like, this is not the right coconut. This is not the right, like, nobody eats this and nobody drinks this. And I used to be like, what is he talking about? And now I'm like, oh my God, I know. Like, I would never.
Yeah,
It's just
different
for the
quality.
aesthetic, but nobody actually drinks like that's an old coconut that like people throw away and like grate and stuff. Like they want the young one that's sweet.
You got it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it.
So he used to like go off and be like, this is like a tourist thing. And I'm just like, what is this man
Absolutely,
going off about? But now I'm
absolutely.
like, yeah, don't give me that.
Yeah. Now you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on coconuts, coming from South Africa, but we have other interesting fruits that also you taste elsewhere in the world and you think it's not quite the same. But I am very excited to taste both the Caribbean and Indonesian coconuts now. Yeah, Mo, I'm really inspired by your journey, and yeah, I mean, obviously you've walked a difficult path to get here, and I'm sure you've had some people along the way that have been mentors. What do you feel like has been the best professional advice that you've received?
That's a very good question. I feel like I've received a lot of really good advice along the way, but I think I'll pick this one. My mentor, one of my mentors in Austin, he said, there are only two people that you need to impress. One is your 6 years old self, and the second is your 80 years old self. The former tells you how big of a dreams that you had, or you wish you had, that inner child of you. The latter basically tells you how much meaningful life you had. And then if you could please these two people, then everything else really doesn't matter. And I really like that advice because I think, it first honors your inner child inside of you, what's your wildest and biggest dream. But also you think in the future, you're projecting yourself and try to ask yourself, if I do this, would I be happy when I am 80 years old? Would I, would I have done like all the things that I wanted to do throughout my life? So, and that manifests the different ways and things in your life. When you make tough decision, for example, I stick to this framework. Okay, what would my 6 years old say? What would my 80 years old say? And then with that framework, either professional or personal matters, it brings the pressure down and it gives you clarity. What decisions are aligned to what you want in your life. So yeah, I'd say that one.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of the inner work that I've been doing along my journey has been about you have to be the parent to your inner child. You
Yeah,
have to comfort that space, and you also need comfort. So it's a
right,
beautiful, being a parent to yourself, being a child, that whole dynamic, treating yourself adult to adult sometimes,
right, right,
taking on all those roles within yourself, and that's a really nice way of doing that. So yeah,
right.
that's awesome advice.
Yeah, I love that. It's
Yeah.
beautiful advice. And it definitely does take the pressure off, I would say, and give you some clarity. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, yeah.
I think that might be a nice segue for us into our gems because that's such a beautiful gem.
Yeah.
So we do this thing Mo, every week where we talk about gems of the week, and it's really just what is making us be good working professionals in the world, what fills your cup, anything that really just stood out for you from the week. I'm going to pass the baton. Sash, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So this week we were really busy kind of moving and going all over the place on short notice, which seemed like it was going to be like a much smaller thing than it turned out to be and a much more seamless thing than it turned out to be. So for me this week, I think just kind of getting back into holding boundaries, seeing what I can do and then trying to delegate a lot more has really helped me because at some point you realize you just cannot do everything yourself. I think for me that's been really helpful in terms of prioritizing and also creating clarity for my week and my goals and just seeing like, okay, who can I utilize as resources who have offered, multiple times, but maybe didn't take them up on it or didn't think it was necessary, or just prioritizing rest, like whatever those boundaries happen to be, because when you're not feeling well, everything kind of goes out the window. So I think for me, that's really helped me just be braver with my boundaries. Sometimes I think I do a pretty good job, but then I realize when I'm depleted, like obviously I didn't do a good job either, prioritizing rest or delegating. So it's a constant battle. And then just realizing also that, old ways won't bring new, new energy in. So assessing, how I've been doing things and if there's a better way to do it. So I think a lot of times, and we talk about this a lot, there is no set path for entrepreneurship. And so you're kind of making it up as you go. And I think it's important to kind of honor your own self boundaries. Otherwise, you just never get to where you're trying to go because you're so busy like combating things on the way there. I think boundaries is one of the first topics that we kind of covered in our first few months, and I had to go back and seriously think about. And it kind of took like people close to me saying something to be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I should, I should reassess this." What about you, Nicole?
Oh, that's great. I hope your boundaries, you're finding them being blissful now, going forward.
A little bit. I think it's still uncomfortable for me, but it kind of reaches a point where it's like one of those choose your heart, right? You do everything yourself and then you kind of have to deal with that. You don't do everything yourself and might not feel comfortable asking or pushing off things on other people or like asking for help or their input, but then you free up time. So it's a constant, I feel like, push and pull with that. But it is a little easier after talking about it for so many times. I feel.
Good, good. Yeah, yeah. I feel you. I feel you. I'm still practicing setting blissful boundaries as well. I think it's a constant thing. For me this week, it's been a really interesting few weeks of synchronicity. I don't know if you guys have read up a lot about when you keep picking up like your phone or you keep looking at the clock and it's 10, 10, 11, 11, 23, 23, and it's like all these little signs that have been coming through. And I've now started researching what they all mean because they all have their different like little meanings and kind of what am I doing just before this, at that time so that I can understand the synchronicity and the message. So it's been a lot of validation from the universe that I'm on the right path, which has been wonderful, giving me kind of a sense of confidence because sometimes you feel uncertain in yourself and where you're going. And then just also seeing, like, again, we all know these things, but like when you make a little mind shift that's honoring who you are, putting a boundary in place or, doing the right thing, then all of a sudden the universe, like things happen, and somehow it's always surprising when that happens, but it's like it's the most obvious thing. So yeah, I just made some really like big decisions within myself, realizing certain chapters have come to a close within myself. And once I recognized that and kind of stepped into that calmness, yeah, just beautiful blessings and surprises have been flooding in. So it's been really, really cool. It's really been filling my cup and energizing me. And yeah, that's pretty much mine. Mo, how about you?
I think this week is mostly about setting intentions for me, or not setting intention, but being aware of the intention when we're doing our things. I think there are so many things that I want to do, I want to achieve, and then obviously probably so little time, right? All of us feel that way, and sometimes it could basically feel that, oh my god, there's so many goals that still are not accomplished yet, and then you are in this autopilot mode where you're just trying to like, okay, do more, but then you forgot, why am I doing this? What's the intention behind this? And I think reminding ourselves about what are the intentions of behind the stuff that we're doing, I think at least personally helped me to zoom out from this autopilot mode, that I do things more intentionally, allocate resource more intentionally, and in the end it just helps me better, both doing things more effective, but also get that mental peace of why I'm doing certain things, and it's okay if things don't go as planned or scheduled. And yeah, that just gives me peace, and but still the drive and enthusiasm to get things done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, intention's always something to be assessing because those things, intentions manifest very directly. So I find, at least in my life. But yeah, I think that's a great thought. And for our audience out there listening, as we think about our gems and this question, what choices do you feel like you've been making to follow your passions, or what have what are the things that have brought you to your tipping points and the crossroads in your life? And how have you been setting intentions or, thinking about your calling? Do you feel like it is still calling you out there? Or do you feel like you're living it? Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts and your journey.
Yeah. So I always believe that a true calling boils down to two things. First is where you're needed the most, and then second is where you can contribute the most. And if these two things are satisfied, then I think, most likely that's your true calling. This calling can change over time as we, evolve and grow in our phase in life. But I think, having this framework helps you to identify where you should channel your energy and resources the most to your truest calling. For me, obviously, my calling has changed over time. When I was 18 or 17 years old, my calling was just I wanted to get a college education, wherever it might be. It ended up being in Japan, but who knows? If North Korea had a scholarship program, I would probably have gone there. Just to get a college education. And also at the time, like I said, my mom was stay-at-home mom, and my sister also was going to college, so we need some sort of financial resource, right? So then when I was in Japan, I also was doing part-time to kind of help mom financially, so that my sister could still go to college and take care of other expenses. So that's another calling, basically, that I really need to make sure that mom is all right over there, and my sister could also get a college education. And when I went to the US, my calling was like I want to work Silicon Valley because I want to see like what it feels like to work with the best engineers in the world. But I would say that meeting people from different background and living places where they have different cultures would only help you find that calling, because you get exposed to different way of thinking, you get exposed to different way of doing, you get exposed to different ways of like what happiness means, right? So obviously my time in Japan was very different from the culture way of thinking that I got exposed in Indonesia, and that only enriched my perspective about life in general. And Japan is very collective based country, society, right? Then I moved to the US, where it was totally the opposite. It's like the core tenet of individualism, right? Total opposite from Japan. But then I got exposed again to different ways of thinking and cultures and mindset and identity. Sometimes I joke with my family and my friends, when I go to Indonesia, they don't think I'm Indonesian anymore because it's just like very different, the identity. Obviously not a lot of Indonesian guys have long hair, probably that's one. And second, also sometimes they just feel like, whoa, yeah, the way that you're thinking, the way that you're approaching problems, very different the way people would approach problems over here. That's just because probably as part of my story, I own it now because I got exposed to different cultures and different stories. And but that for me helped massively, because now I was not only laser focused or limited to one particular point of view, but I have seen different point of views and different ways of doing things, and then that culminates together to form like who am I truly, right? What is the unique contribution that I could give to this world? And it's so that in the event that after I'm done in this world, everyone can say that the world was better because I was here. So that's the ultimate holy grail that I'm trying to achieve, and I'm grateful that because I got exposed to these different cultures, it just helped massively to see it from many different angles.
Mm.
So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we talk about that often on here, living and working around the world, and big proponents of people having experiential learning, like you say, and integrating that into yourself. And yeah, that's wonderful. I think that if that is everyone's holy grail out there, the world will be a better place. So, on that, where can people find you, Mo? How can they connect with you and just
Uh, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I rarely do social media. Now that I quit social media company. uh,
we wouldn't delve too deeply into
yeah.
that.
But yeah, I'd say LinkedIn would be the best way to connect and reach me. And then just type my name and I'll accept your invite. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your advice. I think it was very enlightened. I'll definitely be listening to this episode a
That's,
few times in the next week. I really appreciate your perspective, and we look forward to all great things that are coming from you and with you, and we look forward to seeing what that looks like. What would your vision, last question, be for in a year from now? Where do you see yourself?
I would still see myself with long hair, hopefully longer. I would keep my hair long. No, but I think in the next year, I would envision myself to first grow in my career at NVIDIA. But also, I want to have a side project personally for me that could basically bring me closer towards what the vision that I talk about, either it in business side or helping more with education system in Indonesia. Would love to gradually see that happen, and then I think that would bring so much joy and also more motivation to just learn more about what I need to learn to achieve that goal, and just makes me feel more alive in this world, and wake up every morning feels that yes, we have some exciting stuff to do. That's how I see myself.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up. Our listeners, Nicole gave some really good pointers. We encourage you to think about, where the tipping points have been in your life, and share it with us. And we'd love to hear from you. Remember to tag us using hashtag These Friday Feels to share your stories, and listen to us on all your favorite platforms. And to work with us or have us broadcast Friday Feels from your space or organize your next workation, feel free to reach out to us at hello@friday-feels.co.
And next week, we are making moves in the music industry, and we're chatting to a very dynamic entrepreneurial woman, Madeline van Geens, who has lived a life you see in the movies and has then stepped out of it onto her own to make magic in what she loves best. So stay tuned for episode 24 next week as we uncover the challenges in making those tough decisions, but the rewarding ones. But until next time, that is our mix. We've had so much fun mingling with you, and we wish you safe travels into your bed, into the night, and into this awesome weekend. So see you next week, and keep it real.